Hey guys, today here at bringspark.com, I'm here with someone that I met a few years ago when we were speaking at the same conference, and I was honestly very impressed by what she had to say. I mean, I've worked in communication, I've worked with relationships and all that for many years, but listening to her speak was mind-opening, and there was a lot of stuff that she said that I'd kind of thought about, but I never kind of pinned it down to the nitty gritty of things, and what she explained kind of put a lot of pieces in place for me. So I'm really happy she could be here today. I'm talking to Madison Missina. She's a sex and relationship therapist. She's a mediator. She's a writer and a public speaker. And she's also Australia's biggest porn star. So I'm really happy she can be here. She has a lot of interesting stories and a lot of great insights that I think can help us understand communication and relationships and basically just living life on your own terms even better. So Madison, thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you. What an intro. You're so
Well, I
kind.
meant every word of it. I really did love your speech. I think I told you too back in the US when we were speaking there. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to get you on here since we started. Honestly, it's been a question of the time difference because you're in Australia, I'm in Norway. So, I just got up and it's getting late over there by now, right?
Yeah, it is. It's at nighttime. But it's all right, we got there. We're about, 50, we're exact opposites almost.
Yeah,
So
pretty much.
yeah.
I went to Australia once. I was jet lagged for like a week. But anyway, let's get to you. What's your story? I know that's a huge question, but it lets you start, with whatever you want. How did you end up, being where you're at today?
Yeah. Well, I suppose this starts a really long time ago when I was a teenager and answering all these big questions of what it is that I'm going to do with my life. And with my life circumstances back then, I always knew I had to do something extraordinary. I didn't have the same, opportunities as other kids, with access to education or being able to live at home or things like that. So I made quite a controversial and risky decision to enter into the adult industry at 18. And it's been an awesome road. Since getting my first job there, I started. I've always been a massive nerd. I, just have this thirst for education, and every year I've already, achieved one qualification this year, and I'm starting my masters next week. So I just can't stop learning, and what really led me in my early career was looking at things that were coming up with my clients when in sex work. And one of the things that I was noticing was the amount of counseling and personal development and support that I was having to give them. And so I went ahead and and went into counseling and social science and ended up being a sex and relationship therapist. And from there on in, I went and did mediation and it was crazy. And in my early career as a sex therapist, I think I've been a sex therapist now for about 6 years. So I think I'm getting old. Um,
Well, you don't look it, obviously.
thank you. But yeah, so no one always wanted to be able to public speak or be able to teach or do sort of I call it therapy en masse. I never really wanted to be the type of therapist that would just sit in a closed room with one client and work individually. I wanted to do something more than that. But I didn't do anything. I didn't have anything. I call it sort of obscene or anything to make me stand out. So I took the even more controversial step in 2012 to start doing porn. And all of a sudden, when you're a sex therapist who's also done porn, everyone wants to talk to you and hear from you. So it's been quite awesome, but quite a risky, unique step to take. But just yeah, it's going really really well. So yeah, so that's just about where
Yeah.
I'm at today.
Now, one of the things that when we were hanging out, and also that we talked about just now before we started recording this, is, you're living a life that's not exactly standard or normal in the traditional sense. And I'm sure that you have to deal with a lot of people who want to judge you or who want to put you in this box that they have for what they think. How do you deal with all these people? How do you live life the way that you want to live your life?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. A big thing that I learned, and I did my bachelor thesis on the disclosure of sex work in intimate relationships. And what I found from that thesis was that what made that disclosure positive and something that the other relationship partner was going to accept was the self-esteem of the sex worker, how she felt about what she did was the biggest determining factor. And so carrying on from that thesis, I've sort of learnt that life is a projection of our thoughts. And so when it comes to disclosures or talking about what it is that I do, I can own what I do. I know in myself the reasons why I've made my decisions. I feel quite comfortable and quite empowered, although that's a bit of a dirty word in the adult industry at the moment because everyone always asks us, are you empowered in that job? And it's like no one cares if you're a receptionist and you're empowered, but for some reason we have to be. But I truly feel that I am, and that comes across. So I get to do things I never imagined that I would ever do. So I get invited to go into high schools to talk to school kids about, safe sex. Or, one of my most popular talks is the difference between porn sex and real sex. So we can start giving them porn literacy and, teaching the kids. Because obviously, the average age for the first viewing of porn these days is 12 years old. So, we need to be teaching these kids exactly what it is that they're seeing us enact on screen. So it's going really well.
And that sounds like a very important, actually two very important points that you brought up there, safe sex and actually sexual education that goes beyond, how our baby's made. Because that's one of the things that I personally have a passion for is letting people know how this stuff actually works and what's good to do, what's not. And most people never get that opportunity. They, like you said, they learn from porn. They start watching when they're just kids, and they grow up. And I think that's But what's that like? Like, do you get people protesting that part of your job too, or is everyone comfortable with having you going into high schools and doing these talks?
Well, yeah, for the most part, everyone's comfortable. I mean, a really beautiful thing that I have been discovering, most of the adversity that I experience these days actually comes from my industry. So I'm doing something that's a little bit different from what everyone else does. A lot of sex workers and porn stars have this whole separate life and career that they're working on, and they keep their two personas different. Whereas I've completely merged mine. It's all together, and I own it. So it's quite intimidating, I think, to my peers in the industry that I'm stepping up and doing this. And I've had a little bit of bullying and adversity from them. But the beautiful thing is that when I'm in greater society and I'm speaking to people that aren't in the adult industry, I am being received so well. People are, coming up and asking questions. I write a blog, and I'll be at parties and I will meet mothers that are reading my blog, and some of the things, they're talking to their kids about that I have, spoken about on the blog, or if they've seen me at Sexpo and I'm for some reason, I don't understand how I've gotten so involved in helping parents communicate to kids. But, but it's just one of those things that's just sort of popping up, and I'm growing with it. So it's quite good. And I think, I being such an outspoken person and not being frightened of adversity, I've fallen into a lot of roles where I've advocated for the industry, and and I go up against people that are anti my industry all the time, a lot of, Christian fundamentalist groups or rescue organizations. And one thing that I do when I'm speaking out and dealing with them is, and this has probably come a little bit from my mediation background, is, when someone is coming at me with their own assumptions of what it is that I could be, or, thinking I'm stereotypical or whatever, it's that they're missing another perspective and they're missing information. It's not that they're wrong. I hold this view that people are whole people on their on their own respects, and they've made assumptions and all that based on the information and their life lessons and their worldview so far. And if I had that same experience, then I would think that as well. So how could they be wrong? It's just that we've got two different information sets. So rather than, heading into a fight or jumping in to defend myself against someone, I try to just, provide this alternate perspective of, well, that's cool. You've seen all this type of stuff, but have you thought about, these are the other things that we do, or, that type of stuff. And that seems to be, working and creating great traction at the moment.
So your philosophy is everyone's doing their best based on what they know and what they understand?
Yeah, exactly right. Because I think I like to always say that the universe is a friendly place. Because if you want to test this theory, go out into the street and ask a stranger for directions, or just go and forget something in a shop. People will chase after you to try and help you. So it's only people's stories of you that makes them treat you in a mean or a negative way. So if I was to walk around thinking that people are trying to maliciously hurt me, or people are against me and I should take that personal, then I'm going to be, living life in a very stressful, dark place. And, that's really not the way to go. And also too, if you're viewing someone from the perspective that they're out to get you, or, if they're angry and it's personal against you, you're not providing them much opportunity to be able to move forward and have a good relationship or a good communication exchange with them, because you're already on the back foot, and you're going into war and, into fighting with them. And, that just doesn't solve any problems, really.
That's perfect. I used to work as a conflict mediator myself, and what you're talking about now is kind of the core in actually approaching conversations where people have different views of life, or just disagree about stuff. So that's very valuable. Now, for those who don't have that experience, because there's a lot of people out there, and I'm sure there's a lot of people watching this right now, who when they get into a difference of opinion, they tend to go towards the fight and the discussion rather than the understanding and the productive conversation. What would be your advice for these people in order to help them to make that switch that makes these disagreements more productive for them?
Yeah, well, my biggest thing that I teach is the first act of war is defense. So if someone comes to me and they're angry, or they think I've done something wrong, or whatever it is, and I get that feeling inside where you're like, oh, look, I'm gonna tell you and give you a piece of my mind. Well, yeah, the fire response. That's the moment where you know, I like to say these days, they've probably got something there. I probably have done something, and I'm going to sit back for a moment and see if that's true, and look at my own behavior and take, whatever they're coming on. And then, regardless of whether I found it or not, I go for a more information thing. So I will, ask them to tell me their side more. And then I will try to pick out, where it is that we're on the same wavelength. So at the moment, an argument or whatever it is that I've been having a lot on social media with rescue organizations that are trying to abolish my industry, they're all saying that because there is sex trafficking that exists in the world and they need to save sex traffic victims, then my industry shouldn't be legal. And obviously, I'm very against that. A lot of this argument is totally illogical with me. But if I just go in there and say, no, wrong, we're in a fight. But when I go in there and I say, okay, yeah, so I'm hearing that sex trafficking is a big problem and you want to save them. Well, I want to save them too. Sex trafficking is horrible. We actually meet and agree on that level. So, tell me more about your side so I can understand where you're coming from. Because ultimately, what I'm trying to get to is for both of us to be in conflict, we're both missing crucial pieces of information from either perspective. And, the more information I can find out from them, that's going to make it easier for me to try and point out where we are aligned.
Hmm.
And, eventually, obviously, sex trafficking, that's a big fight and that will go on for
Obviously.
years.
Yeah.
But,
So
yeah,
what you're doing is looking for common ground and, making it clear to both sides that you have a common goal or at least some common understanding of what's going on, and then you make an effort to understand their side of things so that you can more easily, using that information, help them understand your side of things. Is that about right?
exactly right. Yes, well said.
So this is funny. It completely different context, but it reminds me of a quick story when I was actually I just started working as a conflict mediator, which I'm gonna blame that for me not catching this when it happened. But I shared an apartment with a friend of mine, good friend of mine. We grew up together, and we were always fighting about our kitchen because our kitchen was always a mess. And he was complaining that I never cleaned it, and I felt like he never cleaned it. I felt like I cleaned it like pretty much every day, and this went on for weeks where we just fought and yelled at each other for not, the other one not cleaning the kitchen. And then one day, finally, I went, you know what? I don't actually know what he means. Like he keeps telling me that it's dirty and that I never clean, but I feel like I clean, and I also feel that it's dirty, which means that he mustn't clean. There's something going on here. So I sat down with him and I said, so when you're saying that the kitchen is dirty, what are you talking about exactly? And he went, well, your cups and saucers are on the counter all the time. There's crumbs everywhere, and the sink is always a mess. And I started laughing because I am a bit messy, and especially when it comes to the surface areas, I don't care too much. But the floor needs to be clean, and to me, I need the floor to be clean because if I'm walking over a floor and I get like in Norway, you don't wear shoes inside, so I get stuff stuck to my feet. That's just horrible. I hate that. And he grew up halfway on a farm where they went in and out of the house with shoes all the time, so floors were just a mess. So he thought our floors were fine. I thought that was, just a mess. And I just started laughing because he was so funny to me. We'd been fighting for weeks about the same thing, except we'd be fighting about two completely different things. But because we never took the time to understand where the other one was coming from, we
Hmm.
never got to the root of it until we did just that.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So that's an everyday story about what you're talking about, and I'm sure a lot of people can recognize stuff like that. So the method that you're talking about finding common ground, understanding where the other person is coming from, and then trying to come to a solution based on that knowledge, seems perfect to me.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that's awesome.
It was funny. I still tell that story when I teach my workshops and yeah. But you were talking about something that I feel tie into this a lot. You mentioned it earlier, and you said that life is a projection of your thinking or your thoughts or your experience. And it sounds to me like that's kind of what you're trying to do when you do this. You're trying to figure out what the other people's projection look like. Uh,
Yeah.
could you go into detail about what you mean when you say that life's a projection?
Yeah, well, it's not a new thought. It's a philosophy that we're seeing a lot these days in sort of new age psychology and mindfulness, and all of that. And one of your other guests on your site, Michael Neal, does awesome talks and work along this line. But basically, um, life is a projection. It means, we have thoughts that go through our head all the time. And they just come in and go out, and stress and issues happen when we believe our thoughts. And so you have a look at a situation where I'm just trying to think of something that's sort of everyday. So say you lose your job. um, you can look at that, I'm no good, I've lost my job, I'm never going to get another job again, the job market is horrible, and you can have a really negative experience. you're going to be down and depressed. You might be, you might go to a bar. Not that I'm saying drinking is the way to deal with it, but you might go to a bar and someone may come and sit next to you and want to talk, and you'd be like, no, don't talk to me, I'm so depressed. I've lost my job, fuck this, the world's horrible, and then your life's going to be pretty crap until you've resolved that. Or you can say, I've lost my job. This means it's exciting. I've got a new opportunity that's going to come. I'm just going to be open and do what I can do to work on my plan, but just trust that things are going to work out. And then if you have a look at the behaviors and the way that you're going to view your life when you're believing more positive thoughts, you can go to that same situation where you're at a bar or at a wedding and someone comes and sits down next to you, and because you don't have it in your head that your life is crap or that you are crap, you can be open to that, and you don't know, that might be someone who's got the next job opportunity for you, and then you see an actual real projection of everything that happens. One of the things that I look at when I work with people about projections is cyberbullying. There's, it's quite rampant in the world, and being on Twitter and being in porn, I get quite a lot of cyberbullying, and when I work with bullied victims, I always notice that these are strangers on the internet that know absolutely nothing about me, that are spilling vileness and all of that. So where's that coming from? That can't be coming from me. That has to only be coming from their world that they're projecting onto a computer and outside. So it's got nothing to do with that individual person. Is this making sense?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's one of those things. So in my work as a counsellor, I help people to question these thoughts that are causing them stress. I mean, ultimately, if you continue this line of thinking that life is a projection, even positive thoughts and all that is also a projection, and therefore not really reality or true, but still that's a happy dream. And why wake someone up from a happy dream? Let's wake up the people that are in nightmares and get them to see the world from a different perspective. So, and another story that I've got from my life where I was starting to wake up and see that life is a projection is all about mothering. For years and years ago, I got diagnosed with infertility, and when that happened, it was horrible, and I got so angry at the world and shut everyone out, and I hated mothers. I hated hearing my friends bitch about tax or childcare or whatever, or if their pregnancy was hurting them. I was like, how dare you, you're so lucky, I didn't get that opportunity, I'm never going to be a mother, blah, all that crap, with the pity party that I was holding. And when I started to wake up to myself and started to become more positive and open, and I came across this thought one day that I had that, being a mother doesn't necessarily mean actually biologically having a child. So I'm just going to be open and look at everyone in my life and see how I can mother them, how I can be more mothering to my friends and all of that. And then something really beautiful happened in my life. And about 2-3 years ago, this young boy turned up to move in with me because he was having a tough time with his parents and he couldn't live there. And now, I have sort of my own foster son, and this year I got my first Mother's Day present. And and so, because I'm projecting to the world that I am a mother, I am seeing children and, and Alex, my boy, come into me and to, come to see me as a mother. So I have projected to the world that I am this mother figure and what's happening in the physical world. So I think, in my life, that's probably the most meaningful story of, how, you can project your thoughts and miracles can happen.
Yeah, I guess there's a popular thing within, or for some psychologists that say that, whatever you're focusing on in your life is what you'll have in your life. So if you're focusing on, stuff like that, then those things are going to start showing up because you're going to start noticing it. You're going to see the opportunities to have more of that in your life, and you're going to create it.
Yeah,
It's a beautiful story.
Yeah, isn't it? Very good. Took a lot of.
But you've had a lot of ups and downs and back and forths, and you've worked with a lot of clients, I imagine, that have a lot of challenges, and as you said in the beginning, that's kind of how you got into all this, was you realized how much counseling you were doing with a lot of clients and a lot of people you met. Adversity is a big thing, and it's something that everyone has it in their life at some point, some to greater extent than others, but it's still important when you experience adversity. It doesn't matter how big it is, it just feels awful for most people. I know you do a lot of work with people on how to deal with adversity and how to overcome the things that are bothering them. Would you mind walking us through that? What's your philosophy on that?
Yeah. Well, obviously, being a therapist, a lot of the therapy clients, they come into my world because their world has just fallen apart. They've gone through a big struggle, and I always see it as, it's like, it's really beautiful in life when your entire world crumbles down and you're on the floor, because that's a really good foundation to build yourself up again. And what I've noticed in my clients is, it's always like, the language I use is that some people are asleep and then they need something big to wake up. And when people are asleep, um, to me, what that means is they're sort of on autopilot. They are operating and dealing with life based on old defense mechanisms from their childhood, judgments of people, expectations of what the world should be, or how their relationship should be, holding on to things of form. I need to have that job, I need to have this car, whatever it is. And ultimately, none of that stuff has been shown to help anyone with happiness. So, they go through life being asleep, and they do quite well until something really horrible happens. And it's like, in that moment, there's enough pain that these people are able to say, God, help me. What I'm doing just isn't working anymore. And that's the part where I love getting in, and we really start from the bottom, and cut through all of those negative, incorrect thoughts that they're believing, that are impacting on their life and their world, and see where we can start anew, and rebuild, and sort of let go of things of form. We are actually we're in a bit of a materialistic phase, I think, in society and in our time in history, where everyone needs that new TV, and everyone needs to have like multiple phones and an iPad and a laptop, and spend all their time on social media, and no one is able to be really with people, and with connected, being connected or being present in a moment. The number of times you go to restaurants these days and everyone's on their phone, kills me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really getting people back to basics and to be present, because quite often, when even in the darkest times of people's life, if I can just get them to stop thinking in thoughts of what their future might be, or thoughts of what their past was, or what they're wrong, if I can just get them to be present, everybody is perfectly fine in that moment. Everyone always has enough money in that moment. They have, it's all perfect. We don't have to fight reality as much as what I think we need to. It's just, and that's all very Eckhart Tolle, power of now. And
But there's something to be said about the fact, and this isn't even self-help. This is clinical psychology telling us that our predictions for the future are mostly negative and wildly inaccurate. 98% of all the thoughts we have about our future are they're bullshit, and they're negative bullshit. So it totally makes sense if you can pull people out of those thoughts and into what's going on in that moment instead, and looking at their situation right now. You can get them to move away from those doomsday scenarios they're making up in their head.
Yeah, exactly right. And there's something really, I was talking on to my followers on Twitter the other day. There's something really beautiful when you lose that thing you think you can never live without. There's a real sort of coming of age moment that I'm seeing everyone have, whether that's that, their dream job or, their parents' death or that, heartbreak is a big one. And that's what it was for me personally when I sort of, I think, grew up. Um, there's a freedom, and it's like, actually, you know what, I'm perfectly fine just as me, and I don't need any of this stuff. I'm still living. I always thought I'd be dead today because I lost that yesterday, but
Right.
actually, life's still pretty great on the other side, and it just makes, I don't know, you just, yeah, you can come alive and get more present and things move.
Mm,
Just, yeah.
absolutely. So you mentioned something in the pre-interview that you called the power of extreme darkness. Uh,
hmm
I'd love to hear some more about that because it sounds like something worth discussing right now.
Yeah, well, the power of the great darkness, to me, well, that's sort of a little bit what I was touching on just before. It's that the moment where everything is so horrible. My power of great darkness actually was last year, and it started off with my marriage. My husband left me under horrible circumstances, and then I rebounded from him into a domestically violent relationship. I'll put my hand up. It's always sex and relationship therapists. We always seem to have horrible. I feel like I need to say to my clients, don't worry, I'm going out and doing all the research. I'll get it right one day, I'll but so went into domestic violence situation, and then I got screwed over in my career. Then I tried to go to the States to Burning Man, and because of my horrible love life and the men trying to kill, trying to bring me down, got me deported. So I was, locked up and in a cell for a while, and it was just horrible. And that whole period, I was fighting everything at that moment. Every time something bad would happen, I would fight back. I was very much operating on defense mode. It was, very dark time, and getting deported was what saved me. And so that was sort of the darkest moment. My biggest fear was getting deported because obviously being a sex worker, the states are not supportive of my career choice,
Right.
even though I've never broken a law. And so when that happened, it was really shocking. And I always thought, when I got home, my house was full of all my friends. Everyone thought, I would be suicidal, that I would have some, great big loss. But what I found was peace, because I woke up in that jail cell. I was sitting there, and the guards went through all my luggage, and I always take a lot of cash too. I like $5,000 with me to the States, just in case they ever question me going to do any sex work, so I can say no, I've got all this money. I don't need any more money. Um, and they took all the cash out, and they put it in my hands, and they walked me looking like this into a jail cell full of men. It was like 20 men in there, on my own. I've never been more petrified in my life. I hide all my money, I shove it in my clothes and down my boot. It was mortified, and I sit in the corner crying for hours. And then this little girl walks in with her dad. She's from India, and this is Turbo. um, and this little girl walks in, and they weren't allowed to stop over or to transit in LA. They had to fly only directly to Canada because she was trying to go to boarding school, and border security had picked them up, detained them. They'd missed their connecting flight, and border security were going to send her and him back to India, which meant that she wasn't going to have this opportunity to go to Canada and all of that. And I just had this. I don't know what it was. I was compelled to get involved in this situation, and I was hearing the dad, crying to the guard, no, please, like this, I don't have any more money, I need to get her to Canada, what can I do? And the guards were like, no, whatever, you don't have the money, you can't do it. And I was like, the universe has put me in this moment where I've got money on me, I'm petrified, and I can go ahead and do this. And so I paid for her to go, her and her dad to go on to Canada so she could go to school. And then, from that moment, it was just peaceful. And I got back and I realized that, everything in life, it can only ever happen for my benefit. The only one stopping things happen positive to me is my own self. In that moment, I could have just been in my own hole in that cell, crying about how horrible my situation is, and that little girl would have gone back to India. But because I was able to get myself out of it and be present, I was able to help her. And things that always happen now, when something bad happens to me, if I don't fight it, if I let it just wash over me, if I just accept that if I've lost something, I haven't lost it, I've been spared. It's because life had other plans for me, and that's okay. And that those other plans are probably better or more meaningful or going to help someone else. Then good things happen and things just work out, and it's fine. So so being deported, which really in my history should be this horrible moment, is a moment that I cherish now. And, just being able to find peace since that is, it's worth it. I'd be deported again, again. So
That's an amazing story, and that's an amazing thing that you did for that girl. I mean, you basically changed her life for the better. So,
well, yeah, I hope so. I'll never know, but it's just one of those things. You always, and another great philosophy that I'm always telling people is we can only receive what we give. Because I have a lot of, clients that will come to me and they're, I don't know, they're upset because they've got unrequited love, and I'm feeling angry because that person's not loving me. And I'm always like, how is it that you feel love? If we felt love, if we experienced things because people gave us stuff, then stalkers wouldn't be a problem. Unrequited love wouldn't exist because we would feel loved and loving when other people were loving us. So we only experience things when we give things away. So being able to help that little girl, in that moment I was helping me, so I was doing it selfishly. I wasn't doing it for her. I was paying her ticket out of there so that, I could get home. And, it's wonderful. And that's very much like it ties back into the mothering thing, I wanted to be a mother, but when I was looking at the world, like, give me mothering, make me a mother, that wasn't working. The minute I started being mothering and giving out mothering, that's when I became the mother. So we only ever can experience what we give out. It's it's never ever what we receive. The world doesn't seem to work like that.
right. And so I've heard you talk about this principle in other ways before, and you've also mentioned used relationships as examples for some of the things you've been saying. I know you do a lot of work with that, and how does all this tie into our relationships with other people, our partners? How do we create the relationships that we want?
So I've really kind of learned when going through with relationship therapy and dealing with people's patterns in relationships is that in life we seem to only have one relationship, and the characters of it are different people. We'll have it with various different partners, but it always seems to be the same pattern, the same hurdles, the same personal problems that we have with that person seems to keep repeating. So it's like we've got some script in our personal development, some lessons that we're learning to be a better person, that these relationships, or this one relationship really is bringing to our attention, and it's going to keep turning up in our life until we've conquered it and worked out how to deal with it. So recently I've worked with a client who has at a few relationships back, she was, quite significantly betrayed and cheated on. And then in all the relationships since, she'd reached this point in the relationship where it was very scary for her to trust someone, and for her to convey getting her needs met in terms of transparency and having, her partner respect her, the way in which she needs to be in a relationship, because she was coming off, either, controlling or, distrusting or whatever. And so we really sort of sat down and dealt with it from the aspect of, okay, so you've got one relationship, you've got this one problem of trust and betrayal. So over the past, 3 relationships, you've handled this exact situation this way and this way and this way. So if we can assume that all those previous ways don't work, because you've already done that, what's some new way that we can tackle this problem that you haven't done before? And that seems to be what is creating success and movement in terms of benefiting these relationships. So rather than just jumping into autopilot and saying, well, he did this to me, so I'm going to write him off, that doesn't seem to be the way to move forward and get any personal growth. And, ultimately, I think, one of the goals of living life and living happy, fulfilled lives is to be able to, have quality relationships and all of that. So, anything that we can do to try and, learn and help us be present and switched on and, truly intimate, with our partners is what's going to help. So, yeah.
So it sounds to me like you're talking about people having a habit of how they deal with their relationships that they repeat in all the relationships they have, which lead to the same challenges and the same problems, at least provided that you don't have a partner that knows how to deal with those exact situations.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if you go back to the fact that, because all of these philosophies and things that I work on build on everything. So if you go back to the fact that life is a projection, you may be in a relationship with someone who knows how to handle that situation very well. But if you're projecting that my partner is a distrustful person, then it doesn't matter how good that partner is. You're never going to be able to feel that or feel secure, because everything in terms of a relationship and our ability to feel good comes from us. It doesn't come from them. When they give it to us, we can't feel it. We have to give it. So everything in terms of, hurdles and things like that we come up with in relation to other people, that's all personal lessons for us. It's not for them. It's got nothing to do with them.
Right. So how
Yeah.
can people start dealing with this better on their own if they don't have a therapist like you, and they know they to get into bad relationships, or they see the pattern in the relationship? What can they do to try to change this?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to go in and have a look at all of their relationships. Write them all down and tie them up to view it as one, and then go through and find out what their own pattern is. If it's cheating or lying or whatever it is, and then deal with it almost like a map, like a brainstorm of what it is that they've done in the past, and then go and have potential new ways of dealing with things. I think ultimately, even if a relationship is a failure and it ends up massive fights at the end or whatever, if you have tried a new way to try and solve a problem, then I think you've learned something, because the next time that comes up, and I predict that it will, if you haven't solved a problem within yourself, it's going to come up in your next relationship. Well, then you can say, well, you know what, I tried A, B, C, and D in that relationship. I got a little bit enlightened and tried E. That also didn't work. So now I'm going to move on and try these things. And I think that's how we grow, and that's the big thing in terms of, breaking patterns. It's not about jumping into what we did yesterday. It's not about thinking about our past and projecting that onto our future. I think it's just about, what if, something could happen that was different. And I think it really is, try to always approach your life in a different way. If what you did yesterday didn't work, just pick something today. Even if it's crazy, if it's different, you might get a different outcome. And that's really what we're trying to achieve, really, with
Yeah,
that present.
absolutely.
Relevant,
So,
right?
what they say that was it Einstein who said that doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different result is the definition of insanity.
Yeah.
Yet still, that seems because I do a lot of work with relationships as well, as you might know, and that's one of the things that I see too is that people come to me and they keep repeating the same patterns. They keep making the same mistakes or erroneous judgments or whatever it is, and they don't realize that in order to get a new result, they need to change their approach because they're putting it all on their partner. They're saying that this is my partner's issue or whatever. And then I
Mhm.
say, what about your ex and your ex before that? Oh yeah, they have the same issue. You should
Yes,
know.
exactly. What's the common denominator? It's you, you
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
So yeah, exactly right.
That's
And the whole thing, if you're saying I can't trust my partner, you in that moment aren't being trusting. You're being always what you think your partner isn't. Because if it's a projection, everything can flip around,
mm,
turn it on yourself. Like there's one type of therapy that I do a lot of work with in terms of like when I'm working one-on-one with clients is it's called The Work by Byron Katie. And it's all about looking at a situation where we judge others, where we judge our neighbors, our partners, our boss, our children, and we always end up at this final point where we can flip it around. So, I'm angry because my boyfriend cheated on me. Well, it's like, well, where is it that you're cheating? He cheated on me. That means he doesn't love me. So you can flip that around in that moment. Are you loving you? You're staying in a relationship with someone's cheating you. So no, you're not loving you. Are you loving your partner? No, because you're being angry at him. Your partner in that moment, if he cheated on you, he was happy with that other person. And so if you want to be peaceful and actually love your partner, then that's great. That's what, they need to do. And for you to be loving towards them, then, you need to accept that. And I'm not saying stay in the relationship, but, there's just different ways in which, we can work at it in different perspectives, that we can look at things. It's quite good. I like dealing a lot with ambiguity and grey and, getting away from black and white, I think, is a bit of our key.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with that. There are very few things in life that are black and white, but a lot of people try to treat everything like it is, and that
Mhm.
gets you into trouble.
Yep, yep,
Okay.
exactly.
Well, thank you very much. We're approaching our time here. I just want to thank you a lot for being here. It's been an amazing talk. I've had a lot of fun as well. And where should people go to find out more about you? You've mentioned your Twitter. I know you've mentioned your blog. What
Yeah.
pages should people visit?
Yeah, so my blog is Miss Madison Missina .wordpress.com. So that's probably a good place to go. I've also got madisonmessina.com.au. On Twitter for therapy, it's Ask Miss Madison, I think. I've got two Twitter accounts, so hang on, I
Okay.
have to verify.
Well, we'll link up all the Twitters and all the pages
Yeah,
on the page for this
yeah,
video.
Ask Miss Madison. Yeah, so
Okay,
awesome.
well, thank you very much. I know we could have kept this going for probably a few more hours if we wanted to, but we're going to spare our viewers for that for the time being. Hopefully, we can get another talk with you at some point in the future. Hopefully, I can get down to Australia soon because it's been
Yeah,
8 years since I was there last, and I would really like to come back and we can do a live interview somewhere on the beach or something.
yeah, that'd
Uh,
be awesome.
okay,
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
thank you for being here.